Good evening, everyone. Once again, my name is Rudy Page, and welcome to a chapter from my life and book with Norma Ellis. And as usual, this is in collaboration with EALING Libraries. And my colleague Nicholas is with us this week. Nicholas, how are you doing?
Great, thanks, Rudy. It's always a pleasure to be back with you, talking to such interesting people.
Great, thanks a lot. And I'll start. Norma Ellis. How are you, Norma?
A star, thank you so much. That is the first time I've been called a star, and I claim that. Good
Absolutely.
evening. Good evening,
Absolutely.
everyone.
Absolutely. And we've got Brother Dean from Connecticut, as usual, one of our usual guests, and he normally has a few words to say as well. And we look forward. So, Norma, tell us a bit about yourself first, where you grew up, and, both in terms of
Okay.
born and grew up, where you were nurtured, I should say. Where you grew up,
Where,
where you were born,
where
and
I
where you
grew
were
up.
nurtured. That's a better way to put it.
Yes. Well, a little bit about myself. It's been a long life journey. I'm now 66, and I was born on the mountains in Jamaica. And of course, I was nurtured there. And then obviously I had to leave. And then I also came to England from about the age of 7, 8, and grew up for the rest of my life here in England. So I've been nurtured in both Jamaica and both here in England.
Right, that's going to be very interesting then. So,
It's been a long journey. Being 66, I've collected lots of footprints.
absolutely. And some of them quite racy. No doubt we're going to hear a little bit more as well.
Very racy. Yes.
Okay. So, Nicholas, over to you.
Hi, Norma. Um,
Hi, Nix. How are you? Thank you so much.
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. I've got a question for you. I did a little bit of reading into you before this because, and wow, what a life you've lived. It's beyond interesting. But my question for you is, what is the story behind your book?
Well, it's a lot of stories behind my book. As I said, I'm 66. I've lived quite a lot of different journeys, but the immediate early years of my life, I was born in Jamaica on a very high mountain top. And at the age of 5, my father left to come to England, like many other West Indians and other people from all over the world. Everybody sort of came to England to get a better life. And then a month or so after he left, uh, my mother died. And a month after that, my mother died. And to a 5-year-old child, that wasn't being communicating to what was happening. You know, why did my father had to leave? The first time I came down from the mountaintop at the age of 5 was to go to the airport to see my father off. And of course, you know, when you're in a kind of village environment in Jamaica, we all went to the airport because many other persons, family members, were actually leaving to go to come to England. And so that was the first time. And for me, I have seen aeroplanes coming across my mountaintop before, but to see one live, it was very interesting. And nobody was saying to me, that's the aeroplane. So I never knew what the name of this aeroplane was. So I called it a big bird, you know. So of course, being very saddened and heartbroken with my dad leaving, not knowing where he'd gone. I'd just seen him going up into the belly of this big bird. Everybody was feeling sad, and some people were crying as adults. So I knew, you know, emotionally, you know, you can feel that this was a serious thing, you know, that our loved ones were going away, but there was no explanation to say, you know, your dad's going to a place called England, he's going to work some money to make life better, you'll see him soon. There was nothing like that, because, you know, as children in the olden days, you know, what did they say? Be seen and not heard as a child. So I think the adults never felt it was necessary to explain anything to us as small children. And so, yes, for me, it was a very emotional experience, sort of seeing my father go, not knowing that this was a airplane. I called it a big bird. And then, of course, you know, on the days when a big bird would fly across my mountaintop, as a little girl, I'd be chasing this bird down. Big bird, come back, bring my daddy back. And so to me, you know, I named it a big bird because, you know, when you're on the mountaintop, all you're seeing is these big birds, these hawks, and they kind of circle around to grab your chicken, to grab your goats. So I was used to seeing that big bird flying in the sky. And whenever we see them, you know, flying around, we know we have to go get the chickens into the coops, grab your chicken. And I can also remember I had a pet chicken. And I used to call the pet chicken Percy. And I used to really protect my Percy from the bird. And then one day, unfortunately, Percy also got taken away. I wasn't quick enough to rescue. So I associated the aeroplanes with the big bird.
Mm. Okay, that's quite a story. So that kind of leads me, Norma, then. So why do you feel it's important to share your story?
Well, I think it's important to share my story because I think it's inspirational, and there's lots of inspiration there for people, especially for people in times like this when everybody's afraid of living. Everybody's afraid of life. You're afraid of COVID, you're afraid of cancer, you're afraid of heart disease, you want to die. You know, everybody's afraid of dying. And so for me, you know, at the age of 5, when I had these series of events that happened with my dad leaving, my 2 grandmothers dying in succession, and I wasn't explained why were they being put under the ground. And I think in later years of my life, I realized that I became healed from a broken heart. And obviously, a month later, after all of this happened with my 2 grandmothers dying, I too became very ill. And on a Sunday morning, in those days, I was born in 1955. So we know that the medical situations that we have now, in those days, there was nothing really. And I'm living on a mountaintop. There's no hospitals, there's no doctor. And, you know, I started pouring out blood out of my nose and vomiting out of my mouth. And, you know, my mother was actually in church when my brother went and sort of forgot her. And she scooped me up in her skirt, went out to the center of the little village, the square, and asked the gentleman who, the only transport at the time that we had was either the big truck that took people to the market and or all the other stuff that needed to be transported from the mountaintop, or back up from Kingston back to the mountaintop. And, you know, and it was on a Sunday, so it wasn't a day for market. So getting him to drive us as quickly to come down off that mountaintop. So that was the second time off the mountaintop, and I was taken to Andrews Memorial Hospital, where I was for about 3 or 4 or 5 days, I think, not more than 5 days, where I was diagnosed with a leaking heart valve, it was called in those days, or a hole in the heart. I think that would have been the common word in those days. I had a hole in the heart. And so that journey started for me.
And you've overcome many challenges along the way then. That's the central message.
Yes, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm a talker, Rudy. I'm trying not to overtake the questions. I'm
Okay.
trying to be as good as gold
Okay.
and just try to be direct and practice to answer what I've been asked.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it has been a big challenge, you know, having this issue, and their diagnosis was I was not going to live to the age of 10.
Really?
And so there was no medical procedure for this, and especially a procedure in Jamaica, there was no medical procedure. So of course, the journey started coming down from my mountaintop, and that is the actual title of the book, Coming Down from My Mountaintop. There.
It's a great book.
And
I've got a copy.
yes, and there you go, Coming Down from My Mountaintop. And if you look behind there, this little house is the actual house that I was actually born in.
Okay.
On that mountaintop. That's the real house.
Yes.
That's not just a pretending picture. And the mountains around was the actual mountains that we lived. Okay. And as I was saying to Dean, you know, when on that mountaintop, we look across to the Blue Mountain, and then we have this beautiful panoramic view of looking down into Kingston and looking all around Jamaica. And we can see the airport, we can see the ships coming in. So most of the time when you have somebody coming in from anywhere, you look and he says, yeah, the ship's coming, the boat's coming, and you get so we can see everything on that mountaintop. We have a lovely view. And I'm scared of heights.
Really? Can you believe that?
Terrified of heights.
And what was the name of that mountain? What was the name of that mountain, Norma?
The mountain is called Mount Prospect. We live in Mount Prospect.
Mount Prospect.
But you know, whenever we're going up there, I close my eyes. I don't want to see. I am absolutely petrified of heights. It is quite a high mountain.
Yeah, of course.
And I always say to people in Jamaica, why on earth do you call this beautiful, you know, hills? Because they're all saying, oh, look at the beautiful hills. And I was like, no, they're not hills, they're mountains. It's
exactly.
They're bigger than a hill.
Great, thanks for that. Nicholas?
Can I just add an additional question to something you said earlier? When I was reading about your life earlier, I saw that you were one of the first people to ever have surgery on your heart.
Yes.
Could you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I find the story about it. And when I read about it, I was just like, I hope a bit about it.
And I think for me, that's why I felt that I had to get this story out, because there's so many people walking around and we don't realize they have some fabulous stories that they can tell that can encourage people when someone is feeling challenged, especially with illness. And, you know, as a small child, you know, being diagnosed with a leaking heart, and really what it is, it's the valve was broken. So one of my valves was not working. And so at that time, there was no medical procedure for this. And so I had to come down from that mountaintop because it was far too high for me to live because of the pressure and the altitude. So again, my mother had to really try to find lots of different foster homes or foster people that I could stay with that was closer to the hospital, so that if anything happened and, you know, I had a nosebleed, I was being able to go to the hospital quite quickly. And of course, there was many of those nosebleeds, and it hindered me from going to school. So I never went to school. And the most school that I had until the age of 10 was always in hospital, at the hospital bed. So if I did this, you know, if I was brave enough, oh yeah, you're going to go to the local school with that foster parents, it might only be for 2-3 days, a week, 2 weeks. And then obviously I couldn't go. Breathlessness, that was part of the whole process. Nosebleeds, you know, you could hear my heart beating over this equipment. At that time it was, and they used to call it like the whole tin can. You heard it beating, like somebody playing those, you know, soca pans, you know. And so school for me was very sketchy. And of course, whenever I went into hospital and I would come back home, obviously the foster carers might decide that they didn't want to keep me anymore, or it wasn't convenient. But my mom was always trying to place me in the best place that she could, so that I could sort of be cared for. So after coming down from that mountain, I really didn't have my immediate siblings or my mom or my dad with me. So that journey that I had to go through as a child was very much something that I had to do by myself. And that's where I've gained all my strength from, doing this journey. And then, of course, being at death's door in Jamaica, seeing all the other children that I was actually in hospital with, they all didn't survive. And so it was, my father was here in England, along with two of my brothers. And then obviously the doctor, luckily for me, that was actually looking after me, she was a heart specialist that used to come down from Miami Heart Institute to come to Jamaica. Once a week, she would come and do a pro bono, and she would look after all the children with heart problems. And then, of course, when she went back to Miami, it was always the registrar that would take care of us and would know what to do. And it was her sort of knowledge that highlighted that, listen, they started doing experiment on valve replacement, because that's what it is, having a valve replacement. And she felt that I would benefit from it, because I was at death's door. It had come to the point where it wasn't a 50-50. It was a case of when. And so she suggested that I took the trip back to Miami and she would look after me. And my mother wrote to my father and said, you know, this is what's developed. And he was like, no, there's no way we can send her to America with stranger. If anything happened or didn't happen, we wouldn't know. They can say anything to us. And so he decided to make some investigation, and actually found out that they were looking for children here in England from the Great Ormond Street Hospital to go ahead to do this experiment. And that's how I came to join my father here to get on the experimental program.
What an incredible journey.
It's amazing.
Most people come straight from Jamaica to here, Norma. That's it.
I know. And the thing is, the journey was far more incredible, you know, because obviously being here again, you know, my father lived in one end of England, Great Ormond Street is in the other end of England, and he wasn't able to come and see me as quickly as he'd like to. And again, I was fostered out, and again, having to do the journey in the hospitals and the convalescents, waiting to go, you know, for this operation. Again, they had to wait for my mom to join. so that they had both parents to sign the consent. And then my mom and my sister joined us. And then I went off to Leeds. Again, all the children that was part of this experiment, they all died. And luckily for me, I was the last one that actually went down. But I was so determined that I wasn't going to die. No. You know, even in those days, if you went into the hospital, you'd have a big open ward. And at the beginning of the ward, you'd have the children's little bit. And then as you go into the ward more, you'd have the adults, and you'd have men on one side and you'd have women on one side. So it's not like today you have a women's ward and a men's ward, nothing. They were just like, and, you know, of course, I was always very helpful, because after living your life in a hospital, you know, your idea was, I'm going to be either a nurse, I'm going to be a doctor, you know, I want to be helpful. And so I was always in the grown-up wards, you know, go and fetch a magazine, tell the nurse they want a bedpan, bring the bedpan, you know, and you could always hear them, oh, poor love, it's her turn, you know. Sorry, I haven't got the Leeds. I can't do the Leeds accent, but it was something like that. And they're whispering. So they all knew what the procedure was going on, you know, but I was just like listening and thinking to myself, they're feeling sorry for me because they think I'm going to die. And I knew that the other boys died because, you know, the first boy, that when he came back from intensive care, which I didn't know it was in intensive care, one of the things that I try not to do in hospitals at night, I don't sleep very heavy, because I always know that it's at the night time. People always get sick, people always die, you know, and they're always struggling next to your bed. So I remember raising the alarm for him when he went through an emergency, you know, and he couldn't breathe and he was struggling. And so I had to ring that bell for them, and, you know, the crash team come, curtains round. And one of the things that I find with how the mind works, and how the presence of God within you always protects you as well, when you're connected to that, is I don't normally sleep, and I'm there trying to stay awake thinking, I need to see what's happening. You know what I'm saying? And sure enough, I fell off to sleep, and I slept very deeply. So by the time I woke up, there was this beautifully made bed next to me, and they'd taken him away. And then I said to the nurse, oh, so what's happened to John? We're just going to call him John. And she says, oh, he's gone back to that special ward that he came from, because he's a little bit ill, so he needs special nursing. And of course, never saw John again.
Of course.
So, of course, having those experience previous, you know, of death, and knowing that process, I knew that he had died and he didn't make it. And so the pressure was really on. When the other two boys went down, they never came back. They never even made it out of intensive to come back to the ward. So the pressure was on when it was my turn. And obviously my determination, and I kept saying to myself, do these people really think that I'm going to come all the way from my mountaintop in Jamaica, go on this big bird, come here and do all of this just to die? Are they really? And I think it's really important when you're going through your challenges of being ill, it's about your mindset.
Absolutely.
It's great what the doctors and the physicians do, but if you are not in tune, working alongside them, then your chance, you're going to be struggling. You will struggle with healing yourself, because the healing starts within us. And I found that out from the time I was a child. And I think because when everybody had gone to school, when I was in Jamaica, and I'm left in the yard by myself with the lizards or the pigs, wherever I was, you know, just being in a big world, all by myself as this little person, talking to the birds or the trees, you know, making believe stories. I've, you know, really cultivated within me that strength
inner strength
and that healing strength from within me to survive against all odds. And I think it's very important. And one of the things that I realized as I've moved through my life, and I thank God for my mom and my dad, they were wonderful and they provided all that I needed. But you know what? I am so glad that I did that journey by myself without them. And I did it without my siblings. You know why? Because it built my strength and it built my character of being fearless and knowing how to go within myself, to heal myself up to this day. And that's where that molding and that nurturing of my character really started on that journey of being healed and being with strangers, moving from one place to the other, leaving Jamaica, coming to England, you know, seeing all these different array of colors of people, and again, always being that one black token within the midst, and being strong and fearless. And I know that my parents are very prideful. They're very much, they're Christian. My mother's a Sunday school teacher, my father a preacher, and they were very prideful. But sometimes within that prideful is fear. Mm-hmm. And sometimes because your parents know what really can happen, sometimes they can transfer that energy of fear. And for me, when I looked at all the other boys, all of their moms and dads used to come and visit them. My parents couldn't afford to come and visit me. I mean, you know, we were working in England. My mother worked in a factory. She probably brought home about less than £5 a week. Mm-hmm. You know, there were struggles. We all lived in one room. They couldn't afford to be coming down from Birmingham to Leeds, you know, every week or often. You know, you can't get the time off. You'd lose your job. So that journey for me, and I saw how when those other boys had so much love from, you know, and comfort from seeing their parents and having them there, I could see that brought weakness into their healing process. Yes. Because they picked up that negative energy from their parents.
Yeah, that fear. Yeah. Okay, great. Nicholas.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I hope that answered your question
comprehensively.
I did an offshoot there because I was so interested in it. But I'll ask my actual question that I was supposed to ask. But yeah, how is storytelling adding value to other people's lives?
Well, as you know, coming back from what I've just been saying about, you know, my journey inspiring others, I think storytelling is really important. And I think a lot of us, we have stories that we can share that can make each other's life a little bit more better. Because I think sometimes people feel so much that they're alone. Nobody else has gone through this. Nobody else is going through it. And it's so important. And they always say within each and every one of us, there's a story. And I think when all of us start sharing our story, no matter how painful those stories are, it's about healing for yourself as well. You know, that's why they tell you if you've got an issue, call up the therapist. You know, the talking therapist, she might be on the phone. It's just somebody to listen to you, and you know, you can unburden yourself, because really and truly, everything that we have and everything that we need is already within us. We came into this world with it, but when we are challenged and we have to dig deep within us to bring out the qualities and the gifts that we come into this world with. It is really very important that we also share that story with others. And I think it's really important that if I've got a story like this that can motivate and inspire someone else, I think it would be unfair for me to die with that story within me.
Okay, that's
So
very
for
clear.
me, storytelling is important. Yes.
That is very clear indeed, Norma. Thanks for that. Right. At this point, I'd like to share with everyone that, in fact, I met Norma in 1982 when I was the sales and marketing manager for Dyke & Dryden. That's how many lifetimes ago now? And
that's a lot. I'm rubbish at maths.
and we were planning. So 39 years ago. 39. Can you believe it? Nicholas probably wasn't even alive, Norma. Do you realise that?
It's a long time.
Born in 81.
There you go. There you go. So why Norma is important in terms of, or Norma's story and her experience are important as it relates to Dyke & Dryden, is that during 1982, when we were planning the original Afro Hair and Beauty Show, 17th to the 18th of March 1983 at the Grosvenor House in the West End, so Park Lane, Norma actually wrote to me from Birmingham, having heard about the show, and said that she wanted to take part in Afro Hair and Beauty, the original show. I can still see the letter, blue handwriting, very neat and tidy, and a small sheet of paper, and of course I contacted Norma. So Norma, what I'm going to ask you firstly is that what are your fondest memories of the hair care and beauty industries, both in the UK and USA? Because we know that you worked in both, and particularly during the 1980s. So we're going to stay, which is in terms of the UK and the impact of the Windrush generations and those of us who are the children of the Windrush generation, its impact and the comparisons that you would make. So take us back to the very beginning in terms of that letter to Dyke & Dryden. Thank you.
Can I take you back a little bit further than
Absolutely,
that letter?
Absolutely. To the beginning, as usual.
I
Take
think,
it back to because
yeah.
you're an international beautician. So yes, let's go right back to
Let's
that
go
young
right
Norma
back.
Ellis. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that story is really important, especially important today. It's Black History Month.
Absolutely.
And it's also the fact that we are revisiting all these racist issues that we already paved the way, that we pushed through. We kicked doors down and we opened up doors for our Black champions.
Courage.
And so, for me, after leaving school, I couldn't wait to leave school. At 15, I ran out of those school gates. And at those times, the only thing that was available for us as Black women was either work in the factory or become a nurse. There wasn't any other career, because you couldn't even work in a shop selling food or selling anything, because the Caucasian, the British people would think that, oh, the Black is going to rub off on us if they serve us. And racism at that time, going to school, population of 450 girls, 450 boys, we had to fight our way through school every day, even just to be taught. It was a challenge. And so when I left school with no A levels, no GCSE, no nothing, I just couldn't wait to get out of the environment. And there goes the dream that I had of wanting to be a doctor. And I didn't want to be a nurse, and I wasn't going to work in the factory. And so for me, I remember seeing a job advertising for a junior clerk. At the time, that's what they call us, clerk, junior clerk. And I went and I got the job, and I had to go to day release college, I think twice a week. And also, you know, so working in the office, doing the filing, learning to type, you know, all these stuff that you would do within the office environment, reception and all of that. So for me, that was my first champion of saying, I'm Black, I'm coming in, open that door. And that's always been my attitude. And then when I was getting bored, you know, you're getting bored of that lifestyle, stuck in your little area, nothing happening. I went into the town center, got myself a job in what they call, it's River Island now, but then it was called Chelsea Girl.
Yeah.
But the equivalent to Chelsea Girl was Primark. So that would be the equivalent, and got myself a job there, and, you know, started meeting one and two friends and changing my friends, you know, roles. And so it worked around the city. And then I used to go into the department store and see all these very glamorous girls, you know, sort of doing the beauty behind the beauty counter, looking absolutely gorgeous. And I'm like, I want that job. That's the job I want, you know? And I was always interested in skincare because, you know, when you're going through your adolescence, I had acne all over my forehead. You know, you could grate some cheese and coconut and everything on my forehead. It was just filled with acne. So I remember before I would go to bed at night, I was always making different portions to try and get rid of my acne and, you know, sort of work it through. And so, again, as I said, I had a couple of jobs within the city. And then I decided I'm going to go to the department store. And so I started off in Boots. And at that time, Boots was a massive store in Birmingham. It had the chemist, it has everything. It's their flagship, and it still is their flagship. And I worked, I got an interview, and I got the job, and I was working, giving out prescriptions. And so I would give out prescriptions, sell over-the-counter medicines, taking prescriptions. And I had a lovely manager, and I said to him, I really don't want to be stuck down here. I want to be upstairs where the makeup and stuff is and stuff. So he says, all right, well, let me speak to the manager up there. And if there's a position, we can get you transferred. And hey, presto, there was. And then working up there, I got very friendly with the buyer. And she was such a lovely woman. And we had lots of things in common. I'm a little rebel. I take chances. I do things, you know, and she had her own issues, which she needed my help for. And I would support her. So whenever there was a job coming up, if it was on any of the cosmetic houses, if it was Almay, if it was Revlon, no matter what it was, she would put me forward. And when you're working in these big department store, you have the supervisor from, you know, Revlon or Almay or whatever cosmetics they do now. And then you have the manager of the department store that you're in, and then you have the buyer of that department. And so you'd have three people that would have to say yes to you getting a job. And I remember, you know, wanting to be on these counters. So what she would do is when the consultants were off on their day off, I would manage their counter for them, get to know the stocks, you know, and stuff like that. But the manager that we had, he was quite racist. So every time I went for an interview for one of these concessions, he would always vote me down. And of course, their supervisor, they didn't want a Black woman to represent them. But eventually, I got into a very big concession. In fact, I made most of the money within the store through those concessions, working for Lanthric, Morney and Cyclux. And I don't know if you remember those adverts with Tweed and Tramp and, all the, and so I worked for those big concessions. And again, I worked there for 8 years. But again, racism was so hot. We worked in a hotbed of racism, and being a Black beauty consultant, one of the first to get such a position, you are always going to be challenged, so I always have to make lots more money than anyone else, and I started getting a little bit fed up again, after I had my son, and I started becoming very entrepreneurial within my soul. I wanted to do things for myself. So I would come to London, and we never had any Black cosmetics in England at the time. And I don't know if you remember Shades of Black, Rudy. They were in Tottenham.
Mr. Shelton.
Mr. Shelton, Shades of Black.
Yeah.
So I would come down to Shades of Black and buy the cosmetics.
Holloway
And
Road.
of course, I'd make these little cards. And when the Black women would come around my counter, shopping, I'd give them a card and say, I'm selling some Black makeup. Why don't you get a couple of your friends together? And you remember like how they used to do the Tupperware parties?
That's right.
So I started my own little thing doing makeup parties, and I was out selling the company. I was out selling the company. And of course, this kind of highlighted to them what's going on in Birmingham, that we are here in London, because they were going to put the concession here in London. But when they saw that I was outstripping them, they decided to do the dirty, come to Birmingham. I worked along with them. And again, within this beauty business, after being in it for such a long time, it's a lot of cutthroat, isn't it? There's a lot of there's a lot of cutthroat, and my throat was cut. I was sacked from my job as a consultant in the most degrading way. You can imagine there was thousands of Black people in Debenhams, coming to get their makeover, and some of them come back 3-4 days waiting to get a makeover. And on the Friday, my best friend, who was a British girl working next to me, I thought she was my friend. She sold me out. And I'm there doing makeup and, enjoying myself. And when I look, I seen this blonde lady pushing her way through the crowd of hundreds of Black women waiting to get makeup. My world, considering my heart, I don't know how I did not, at that time, just have a heart attack and just die on the spot. And she came up to me and whispered, please do not come back after your holiday.
Oh dear.
And so you can imagine there was no dismissal issues like they dismiss you here like that. You take them, nobody would take my case on. I come down to London, I beg, nobody would take the case on, and so that ended my beauty thing, even though I did work a couple of times for him doing special shows and stuff like that. But in that arena you can get used up. And that was one of the things that happened. And I went back into working in an office for about 18 months. I worked in an office being a salesperson, just calling up the old customers and trying to get orders from them. And then I saw a little ad in the paper, in the Jamaican Gleaner, that they were looking for makeup artists to come and work in London with Hollywood Curls. And that's how the journey started with Mrs. Martin and Hollywood Curls. And I came down and I started working for the Sahara Spring Cosmetics. And I met you so many times on the circuit of the salon 80s, where all of the yeah, at Earls Court they were exhibiting, and we, you know, were bringing our black products in the marketplace. And I did a lot of platform work for Mrs. Martin. And you know what, again, at that time, you know, Mrs. Martin also sacked me because she was upset because I wanted to have a birthday party for my son, and she was going to America. She'd left me in charge with the manager, and she said she was going to come back, and she didn't. And I thought, well, no, I'm going to have this party for my son. And so I went and I did the party, and again she said, oh, don't come back because you're not loyal. And again, that shift made, but I used that shift quite wisely, because at the time, being a consultant was, you were just reading information from the back of a box. You didn't know anything about skincare. And while I was in London, I was headhunted by an African gentleman. They were putting the Intercontinental Hotel together in Gambia and wanted me to come there to open up. And I really thought, I'm a beauty therapist. Oh yeah, you know, I know how all this stuff works. And when I had to sign my contract for Gambia, he said to me, so where's your qualifications? And I quickly had to start saying, you know what, I didn't have any qualification. I didn't know about beauty therapies and how being a consultant, a beauty consultant, is so much different from being that therapist. And so for me, that was the journey. And I decided, seeing that I was not working in London, to find a beauty school. And again, you know, when something is for you and you knock those doors and you decide to push them open, they do get open, because as a beauty therapist in those days, even though it was at private, you still had to have maths, you had to have English, and you have to have a biology. And I had nothing. And so the lady who owned that school, she happened to be the head of all the beauty therapists all over England association. And she said to me, I told her all the things that I was doing, consultant and stuff like that. And she said, you know what, Norma, I'm going to give you a chance of a lifetime, and I'm going to let you come to school. Don't let yourself down. You're not going to let us down. It's yourself. And I was taken in, and luckily for me, bless my mother, she never agreed with any of the any of my career moves, because she would say, it's not to the glory of God. No, you can't do that, you know. And when I told her that I wanted to go to the beauty school to learn, and I needed some support, because of course those fees at that time, you know, £600-700 was a lot of money. You go to school now in any private institution, you're paying 10 grand for the qualification that I got then. And even if you got the lower qualification, you have to take it in bits and pieces, and it can cost you up to 3,000-4,000 each time for little pieces of add-ons to become a beauty therapist. And that's what I did. So armed with that new career behind me, feeling really big, was when I wrote you a letter when I found out that, of course, Mrs. Martin had me back. But then I started hearing what was going on with Dyke and Dryden and all the different stuff that was moving around. We did Black Hair and Beauty magazine. I had my first makeup cover from that. And if ever they dug it out, I would feel so totally embarrassed. But when I look at what we did, we were actually trying to set a makeup trend, and we didn't know how to work in color, because everything was changing to color then, but we were working in black and white. But we did the models very strong, very stark makeup. And I suppose what we would call it now would be nouveau. We would call it war, but it was showing the vibrancy. And although and if we saw it now, if I saw that magazine now and that cover, I think I would feel very proud, because it was showing the strength of the colors. even though it looked like war paint was painted on. It was very retro. That's what
I
they would
think
call
I
it.
have that magazine somewhere. I'll look it up, but I'm pretty sure
Well, the first edition, you've got the.
Mhm.
We did, remember we did, I did get a chance after that, with Vera Moore to do a front cover with your help and stuff like that. And I have got the big, I've got everything that I need, but it's the very first issue that I didn't even want to buy it. I ran away because I was so scared. Like, it looked a mess. That's what I thought. But it was very retro. And obviously I met you, on the circuit. And when I knew that the Afro Air and Beauty was going to come on, I wrote you that letter. And I can always remember the day when I came to the interview. I kind of, came in with a fox fur coat on and really looking swanky. Of course, the fox fur belonged to my sister. And we started planning for that show, and it was such a success because I brought something new to the show as well, not just putting on makeup, but I had a facial bed, and I was showing them how to do the cleansing and do the skincare and talking about skincare. So I had better knowledge about skincare, and then giving them a makeover. And I can remember being interviewed by BBC World Service on that show. And it was a ball. And, for me, those are some of the best experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we did the shows for Coventry Cable TV. And then we did.
Yep, there was that one.
The BBC in White City, as it was then. And you did some work with BBC. With the Vera Moore range and everything. So yeah,
absolutely.
Half-breaking days.
We did a lot. We did a lot to support Black women to make the best of themselves. All the radio shows that we did, all the demonstrations all up and down the country in different salons, pushing, showing them how to make the best of themselves. And I'm glad I was part of that journey. And I think when I look now at the young girls and what they're doing and how life is different, everything is on social media. If you're not on social media getting, 1K likes, showing this and that. But, for me, I think those days were fun.
Yeah. So you spent a bit of time in America. Tell us a bit about that before we come to Nicholas. He's going to ask the last.
Yes, and I obviously, again, one of the things that I seem to do quite often is I'll get to the top of the mountain. And when I get there, I see other things and I start climbing down. Because I can remember when I said to you that I wanted to go off to America, it was quite devastating.
Miami,
yeah.
Yes.
And I think it was quite devastating for both of us because we worked very well together. We had so much going on. But I decided I wanted to go to Miami. And of course, I went to live in Miami. And life in Miami isn't as it is now. And it was in the days of drugs, every day people was being shot, killed. I mean, apart from the alligators and the snakes and the lizards, you were being shot and killed. And sometimes, innocent people get caught up in all of the activities of Miami Vice, that was really happening. But I quickly settled. And again, because I had the skills of my hands and my beauty techniques, I was able to find the best hairdressing salon that was popping, who was saying what, and was able to get in there. And again, with the Vera Moore cosmetics, because I was used to it and I was in America, I started ordering from them. And it was interesting because getting to Florida, they never knew anything about makeup. They didn't know nothing about skincare. And everybody wore red lipstick. And if it wasn't red lipstick, they didn't want to know, you know. So that was an interesting time. So I wasn't able to work as a beauty therapist because it meant that I would have to take my exams all over again. I'd have to go to school with all the hours that was needed. Whereas now, if you go from here to anywhere in the world, the associations have all come together. So you can carry your certificates and work anywhere in the world. But at that time, it wasn't possible. And although when I just sort of was getting ready to do my skincare, it changed. And all I had to do was to show my certificates from here, which again, my certificate was far more higher than what they had there. But again, I've met so many different angels on the road that has helped me to be where I am. And so again, I worked in this salon, and all I would do for these ladies was, as soon as they had their hair done, because in that day they had lots of disposable income. Most of them had boyfriends who was in drugs and stuff, and they had to get rid of that money.
Allegedly.
That money, yeah, they had to sell. Yeah, allegedly, you know, they had to get rid of their money as quickly. So you would see them come to the salon 2, 3, 4 times a week, getting a fresh touch, freshen up. So as soon as they had their hair done, they would come and sit in my chair. I would arch their eyebrows. That's what they used to call it when you used to pluck their eyebrows. So they call it, oh, let me have a eyebrow arch. So you'd shape their eyebrows and you would make them over and, you know, get them to come out of the red lipstick. And then I would sell them the skincare as well. And that's how I started making a big name for myself in America, where I remember one night I had to do the one of the Miss American Heat pageant. And this was for the university. And that night there was everybody on the bill, apart from all the girls who was taking part in the show. We had Denzel Washington, Bunny DeBarge, we had Miss America, oh my God, Stevie Wonder, Jane Conning. I mean, we had other ladies from the sitcom shows, Amen. There was just, it was a star-studded evening for Black excellence as well. And I was the only makeup artist that Miami had. And so working in England had helped me because, of course, I was a platform artist here at all the big shows, you know, when we do the Afro Hair and Beauty Show, when we did all the Salon 80s, you know, we had to learn to, so we had to learn to make up, you know, hundreds of people very quickly. And and again, remember, I did a lot of the beauty pageants.
That's right.
So I worked a lot in the beauty pageants here on the fashion shows, and all of that skill was very helpful to me that night. I did all the contestants during the day, and then in the evening I went to the show, did the touch-ups, and then they had nobody to do the famous people, and I was pulled to do them. And I can remember Denzel, he'd just come back from a skiing holiday, and he was with his wife. And you know, when you put the goggles on for skiing and you take them off, you get a tan, so you look like a raccoon. And it was a privilege. And this was before he became as famous as he is now. So I had him. And of course, when I came to the famous Stevie Wonder, I mean, everybody else was fine. He was such a difficult client because he had a keyboard in front of him, and he wanted me to make him up while you know, he was playing, and you know the way he dodges and he carries on and da, da, da. And I said to him, excuse me, can you stop playing this keyboard? I haven't got time to mess around with you tonight, you know, I don't care who you are, you know. And he was like, oh my God, oh, okay, what's your name? You're speaking with a British accent, you know. I says, yeah. and you need to put this away while I do what I need to do my job. And he was accommodating and put it away. And he said to me, you know what, Norma? He says, nobody's ever really had the courage to speak to me in this way, and I get away with it. He said, but whenever I come to London, you know, if you see me, I will never forget you. Just come to the front and I will always remember this day. And so, you know, for me, I started building up, you know, lots of things in Florida, because a lot of the girls, when they say I'm going for a facial, it was Mary Kay. And Mary Kay had just started with their products. And when you go for a Mary Kay facial, you just go with a bunch of women, showing them how to cleanse, tone, and sell their products. And they call that a facial. So when I said to them, I'm doing facials and stuff like that, they was going, but we do Mary Kay. I says, no, this is not a Mary Kay facial. And so if you go to Miami now, they'll call it a European facial.
Okay.
Because I had to rename it and call it a European facial. And when they realized, you know, taking care of your skin and having facials was so different. And for me, so I broke into the market there in a big way. And the thing was, Miami is very much Spanish orientated, but the segregation that you have there when I was there in the 80s was quite rough. They were still at the back end of the slavery mentality. And so you'd have the Spanish people not wanting Black people to come and do things or work in their salons. And they would have all the facials and they would be doing the facials to their people. And the Black Americans was just coming out of, you know, being liberated to know they have disposable income, what is a facial, and living that lifestyle. And so it was good because I was able to educate them and show them the difference between Mary Kay is not a facial, and this is what a facial is.
Great.
And I started, you know, so for building up a celebrity list of clientels, as well as just, you know, Miami finest.
Yeah, no, I remember visiting you in Miami when I used to travel through. So yeah, absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Of course.
So
Of course.
Nicholas is going to give the last question, and then I'm going to give Dean a chance just to say a few words, because I know he's strong on strength and resilience. So, you know, you've really spoken to Dean, I tell you.
Yes, he's lovely. Thank you, Dean.
Nicholas.
Could you tell us a little bit about some of your greatest achievements and what you feel is like your most proudest achievement throughout your career?
Oh my God, Nicholas, that's a fully loaded question. And that is something that there is too many achievements. And I think for me, breaking the stereotypes, pushing down doors to allow Black women to be able to stand in my footstep, you know, especially around the beauty. I go into the department stores now and I see all these Black girls, you know, selling, being a consultant, and they would never have had that opportunity if I wasn't a strong person to say, no, we have to make these changes, and I'm going to be the pioneer. So I think for me, I think my whole life has been about pioneering different changes, whether it's in my career or whether it's in my personal life, you know, because obviously the book is an autobiography of my life, and I've tried to be very open, very honest, very transparent, you know, in my book, whether it's in my career life or whether it was in my private life. And for me, there's been many great achievements. One of the greatest achievements I can say is having a son, because I was told that I would never be able to conceive and have a child because of my heart problem. Yeah. And when I sort of did my operation, I recovered extremely quickly. And they were just so amazed how I can recover as quickly as I did, you know? So that has to be my greatest achievement, being able to pioneer, you know, heart valve replacement that millions and millions of people in this world today just becomes like a routine that has it done. And when I see people going down for their heart valve replacement and the fear and the emotional fear that they have, and I'm like, hey, I did that stuff for you when I was 5 and I made it. So, well, yeah, hello, from 5, don't you think the doctors have improved from that day? Come on. So apart from that greatest achievement of being the pioneer of the very first valve replacement and the only survivor, right now in England, right? Obviously that has been, and having my son, and was told I was never going to be able to have a child, I should never think about getting pregnant. And when I found out I was pregnant, it was like, hey, I'm doing this. And I even said to them, I don't want any help, no forceps delivery on my son's head. You know, I'm going to do this by myself, and coming through that. So again, what a great achievement to be told that you can't, but then you go ahead and you can.
Yeah.
And then all the other stuff, you know, and for me, just making a way for Black women now. We see racism is rising. We fought those battles to be where they are now. And for me, when I see all of the Black people, especially these footballers, they get so much money, they get paid so much money. And as soon as somebody's calling them a word, I was like, hey, mate, get over it. We were called worse than that when we were growing up, but you think that's going to stop us? We got on with the job. We didn't complain. If I was playing football, I would have been scoring more goals to show you. Boom, there you go, bro. Take that home with you. You know what I'm saying? So
Absolutely.
I think we complain. And I think what happens when we start complaining so much about racism, nothing gets done. It just gets tossed backwards and forward. It goes underground because institutionalized racism has always been. But I think what happens, as individual, we can't do it by ourselves. So when we get up that ladder, start making sure you start pulling up your brothers and sisters up to where you are so you can work together.
Absolutely.
And not thinking, oh, I'm the only person in this job. Isn't that wonderful? Come on, people.
Okay.
You know,
okay.
we can do better.
Okay.
I'm getting on my soapbox now.
Yeah, we get the message and we understand. So, Norma, you've got to hear from Brother Dean because he's.
Boy, all I can say is wow. You know, it's not I would say it's a carbon copy. You have to tell your story, the female version of my story. You know, being someone hospitalized over a year, you know, was, you know, from I born in the hospital for 6 months, and you know, teaching, being the only Black person there. Met Rudy, is like all I can just listen and say, wow, you know, that's a duplicate of what I've been through.
Yeah.
You know, going up and to prove to them, I have been in camp where I'm the only Black person, and that's what I said. Jamaicans don't know what racial. I mean, we are there to break down all barriers. We have that blinkers that we're gonna make it through. People are people, despite the color, class, or creed. And I salute you. I would say when I grow up, I want to be just like you. I'm so impressed by your real story, and that's what I admire Rudy's program for. Real story, real people. You know, some of these people, you gotta download information and all these fake things. And in a person that do real, I admire Rudy's program for the real people that tell their story. And that's what we want to do. My mom called me the history man. That's what they call me in my community, because I don't wait and keep the history to myself. I try to pass it on to everyone, you know, because I want to know that whatever I know before, you know, I remember in my community, the same community, somebody was going to draw something and said, what I've done for Hermitage. And I said, no. Now, there was Professor Shevans before me. I've done triple time more than what I have done. You know me, but I must tell you, there were people before me who have done greater things than me. And that's what the Make Connection Works program do. We make connection and we can pass it on. We just hope that the younger generation can just, absorb some of what you've been saying. But as I said once again, wow, congratulate you and I salute you.
Thank you very much for that, Dean. And you raise a great point. That's why you will never hear me put myself before Dyke and Dryden and all those other people who were in the industry, taught us and mentored us. And, so you made such a great point. There were those who came before us, and we continued to build on their determination as well. So thanks for that. Great. Nicholas, as usual, last word with you before we close the show.
Norma, like Dean says, wow. Like I couldn't imagine hearing such an amazing story. And you survive. There are people who you hear that are survivors. You're a survivor to a whole other level. To survive the first heart surgery, and then to fight all the battles that you have throughout your career with the limited education, and then fighting to get the education. You're an inspiration to all Black people, not just
Thank you.
Or male. All Black people. You're an inspiration, and I hope
Thank you.
pick up your book because they're filling with a lot of hope and belief.
Yeah,
Coming down from my mountaintop. It's on
Okay.
Amazon or in all the bookshops. Yes.
Excellent. So remind us all, Amazon and all bookshops.
All the local. It's worldwide distribution. So wherever you are in the world, if you haven't got the Amazon link, you can go into a bookshop and they can order it for you. And if not, you can jump onto your Amazon site and get it. Coming down from my mountaintop.
And just before we go, Norma, you do a podcast as well, don't you? Could you just tell us quickly about that?
Yes. I do a weekly podcast, and it's about self-development and looking at the challenges we go through every day, how we can overcome them. So sharing my own transformation, because obviously, I've lived this life, I've done so many things, but you're always looking to find yourself and, how I transform myself into being who I am now. And we all have a story, and we have a future too. And my backstory makes my future. And so the podcast is on every Saturday. I do put out a podcast, and it's on all the forums that I put it out. And so it helps people, if you're going through some kind of challenges. I've been doing it for almost 3 years now. Okay. And so I do one every week. So there's always a topic there that would be able to motivate and to inspire. If, you're going through some kind of challenges you need. They say a book is an absent teacher. The podcast is also the absent mentor.
Excellent. So, thank you very much.
And the podcast is called Moments with Norma, and you can Google it. So if you just Google Moments with Norma, it will definitely jump up, and you can listen to it on whichever sort of platform, whether it's Spotify or Google or your, whatever it is. Yeah. So
excellent. And I should add as well, as usual, these programs, a chapter from my life and book in collaboration with EALING Libraries, will also be rebroadcast on Fresh FM Radio London. And you can go to freshfmradiolondon.com and you'll find all the previous shows, and you'll find Norma's show on there this time next week. So thank you and good night all, and thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me also.
For having me. Thank you.